This is not a church service. This is a training being run by Siembra, North Carolina. It's called Safe to Work, Safe to School. All those people are here because they do not want Donald Trump's masked arms federal agents on the streets of Charlotte.
But I will say about Charlotte, and this is what the local leadership is leaving out of the equation, is the fact that it is an epicenter for human trafficking. They're ranked number 9 in the country. They also have a massive gang problem. It's also become a major hub for gangs, especially MS-13.
So I want to speak today about the brand new ICE mass enforcement campaign that started this week in the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, and the potentially surprising results it has yielded, because after all, I'm not sure that Charlotte is a place that most Americans nationwide typically associate with being a far-left dystopia or a crime-ridden illegal alien nightmare. Yet, perhaps as you should have learned in the murder of Irina Zarutska, no, that is absolutely the case. Okay, I think a lot of past perceptions have to be shattered. The idea that these problems nowadays are simply refined to the big blue strongholds like Los Angeles, New York City, Chicago, etc., is no longer the case. As a matter of fact, as we saw under the Biden administration, where were those migrants often getting the plane tickets to? It wasn't the big blue cities. It was kind of oftentimes like the flyover states and adjacent things, the cities you wouldn't normally think or associate with illegal immigration. They were going to Detroit, Michigan, Omaha, Nebraska, Topeka, Kansas, places like that, right? Charlotte, North Carolina, this was apparently a big one. And after watching the arena debacle, the cover up there by the mayor, and the insane amount of times that guy was let out of jail, perhaps it should not be all that surprising to you that the very reason this new enforcement campaign in Charlotte has begun is because of the fact that the sanctuary politicians there have been ignoring over 1,000 ICE detainers, and in the process have released illegal aliens that include murderers, rapists, child predators, etc. So in today's video, we'll tell you about apparently what is now coming to Charlotte, the protests that have immediately erupted. Again, you're probably thinking, oh, Portland, Oregon, you know? Is this not Portland? No, it's Charlotte. It's in a swing state. It's typically associated with being kind of like a small, kind of mid-Atlantic sort of southern city. Nope, this is the same situation. You're even seeing attempted terrorist attacks against ICE in very similar behavior. But perhaps the most telling aspect of it all ought to be the fact that a whopping nearly 15% of all of the students enrolled in the Charlotte School District have suddenly stopped coming to school, right? That's 20,000 students as a result of these ICE raids, probably meaning that either they or their parents are illegal aliens. Nonetheless, guys, all right, we'll tell you about this. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. That's not only the best way to support our work, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And with that said, I mean, you can just see this headline that triggered it all. Sanctuary politicians in Charlotte had ignored nearly 1,400 ICE detainers, releasing murderers, child rapists, and child predators. Now, Trump has launched through DHS Operation Charlotte's Web to take them off the streets. And take a listen here as Tricia McLaughlin explains exactly why Charlotte is now on the target list.
Charlotte's a beautiful city, but in this case, its leadership has absolutely failed it. We know that there is more than 1,400 criminal illegal aliens who are in their jails, and they refuse to turn over those individuals to ICE law enforcement, which really, that means a revolving door of justice. And these criminal illegal aliens will go back onto Charlotte's streets to re-perpetuate their crimes. We're talking about serial child pedophiles, murderers, rapists, gang members, people who pose real public security threats to the American people. And so, of course, we are surging resources there, and we won't stop until Charlotte is safer.
And Tricia, we were seeing footage of crowds surrounding federal agents during arrests or searches for illegal aliens, and they hand out whistles for people to use to alert illegals that agents are nearby. How is DHS responding to these individuals who are essentially obstructing justice and getting in the way of these federal operations?
Well, if you are obstructing justice or you are putting hands on law enforcement, you can expect to be arrested and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But we saw this out of New York. We saw this out of Chicago. We saw this out of Los Angeles. And yet we made more than 5,000 arrests so far in Chicago, about 7,000 out of Los Angeles. And we're going to keep going in those sanctuary cities. So as much as these activists and sanctuary city politicians want to try to slow us down, want to try to obstruct our efforts. We have the mandate of the American people. We are enforcing the rule of law that's on the books in Congress, and we will continue to enforce the law and make America's streets safer.
And folks, here have been those results thus far. So just on Monday, Charlotte woke up to a 5-hour federal blitz that ended with 81 arrests, the opening shot of the Trump administration's newest mass deportation push. Leading the charge there was Gregory Bovino, many of you know as the same Border Patrol commander who ran the crackdowns in LA and Chicago. And what he had to say is that many of the detainees had significant criminal and immigration history. Now, what I find to be so interesting is, again, the fact that this is Charlotte, right? 81 people in the first few hours is definitely significant. But keep in mind, you're talking about a place with a way smaller population than, say, a Chicago and LA or New York. It's less than 1 million people. It is rapidly growing, sure, but still, right? Not a place that you'd historically associate with being a iconic sanctuary city sheltering a bunch of illegal immigration. It's actually, as a matter of fact, Charlotte, North Carolina overall, a place that many blue state residents are actually fleeing, whether it's because of affordability or far left policies, or they feel like they want to live somewhere quieter and safer. And yet, again, notice how those problems that nowadays in this country seem to follow you anywhere you want to go. Because I'll be completely honest, maybe I'm just ignorant. I'm sure a bunch of Charlotte residents are going to say, no, you have no clue what you're talking about. But I'm trying to explain, right? Again, the cultural stereotype we have as Americans here. I've never been to Charlotte, North Carolina. I've only gone through the airport like several different times, but never been in the city, right? But when I think of Charlotte, I think of their iconic slogan, which is like where small town meets big city, right? Kind of a quaint, quiet, maybe kind of boring, but, you know, decent maybe place to work and live. Mid-Atlantic sort of semi-southern city that obviously a lot of people are coming to for new opportunities, a lot of reasons. You know, it's kind of similarly seen as like Texas, Florida, or Tennessee, where people are like, hey, let's kind of be part of the boom, you know, let's flee the blue states. And yet it doesn't actually seem like you're fleeing the blue state, right? You're probably thinking to yourself, oh, surely Charlotte won't have the crime policies of LA and New York. Actually, to a degree, you could argue they're worse, right? You could argue maybe in New York that DeCarlos Brown Jr. guy who stabbed Arena might have got arrested on like the 13th time and actually kept in jail, whereas in Charlotte it was 14 times. Okay, so this is something that I think is so important for Americans to pay attention to. And furthermore, how it's kind of interesting, isn't it? That it feels like all of a sudden we've seen a bunch of new illegal aliens pop up in particularly swing states, right? Wonder what's up with that. Just something to keep in mind. Anyways, that said, you also furthermore got the protests from local quote-unquote residents that look completely indistinguishable from what we saw in Portland. So check that out for yourself as well. So yeah, same behavior as Portland, right? You have the people waving the foreign flags. You have the Antifa supporter wearing the same frog costume. Wonder if it's the same guy. Who knows? Might be a copycat. But the overall point here is what? As much as we want to make fun of a place like New York, the reality is they're trying to bring this everywhere. As a matter of fact, I would argue that the Democrats, the liberals, the globalists, whatever you want to call them, are intentionally trying to terraform every place in this country so that genuinely there's no escape, right? You come from New York thinking, okay, I've escaped the craziness. Oh, well, they're going to make sure, actually, there's a reason they were busing and flying a bunch of migrants to the smaller, quieter, sort of more flyover type of states, okay? There's a reason why, as a lot of these smaller cities grow from largely blue state refugees, they're still making a point to put a bunch of George Soros pro-crime style DAs in charge of those places as well. Prime example here. And I look at this and I think to myself, wow, this is happening in Charlotte? Oh, well, maybe, right? Maybe it's perhaps the case that these stereotypes and the types of places in this country that you might have had an image of like 20 years ago, it's not like that anymore. Actually, a lot of places in this country have completely changed, and they don't even look the same, right? So that's definitely worth noting. And again, if you thought you were getting an escape from Portland, we also just saw on the very first day, the very first day of operations here in Charlotte, where Border Patrol agents were attacked by this Transformer Optimus Prime individual that led federal agents on a high-speed pursuit. So take a listen and look at those details for yourself.
So what we had here today was assault on a federal officer. This individual assaulted federal officers at a gas station about a mile away, and then engaged officers in a high-speed pursuit, failed to yield to our lights and siren. She traveled down this cul-de-sac here, came to a stop, and was arrested. That's what we know right now.
Thank you. Was it a protester or?
We don't know. At this time, we don't know.
Yeah, so you have a mayor who is pro-crime. We've all established that when we talked about Arena. You have left-wing terrorists. You have the Antifa supporters, the Mexican flag-waving supporters, and you have a ton of illegal alien criminals in that city. How is this place exactly all that different from the other, like, woke leftist nightmares that we often talk about or think about in our heads? Again, I'm trying to hopefully break that perception for you. Not to attack North Carolina, but rather to, again, explain, like, this is the whole country now, okay? This idea that you can necessarily flee permanently from the damage they're causing, they're trying to intentionally make it so that that's impossible, okay? And that said, here might be the most shocking data of all, is the current attendance at Charlotte Public Schools this week ever since the ICE enforcement and deportations have begun. Okay, because if you needed any proof of, like, wow, that place has changed, maybe you were there 20 years ago. Let me tell you, you wouldn't recognize it now. Here's why. 21,000 students were absent today in Charlotte Public Schools, likely due to the new ICE operations. That's 15% of total enrollment in the Charlotte School District. That's right. That is the number. That is how many freaking illegals, at least 15% it would appear, right? Perhaps even more than that, of the population of that city is now full of illegal aliens. What have they done to this country?
First at 4, we are learning new details about how the presence of Border Patrol in the Queen City is impacting learning at the area's largest school district. For the second day in a row, students at several schools walked out in protest of the Border Patrol deployment here in Charlotte. But an educator now tells us that's not the main reason classrooms are empty. Queen City News anchor Will Lewis spoke with the teacher who says the uptick in absences is a direct result of Operation Charlotte's Web.
David Gillespie says the last 24 hours have been tough.
I don't represent the CMS district nor my school.
But he's seen what 2 days of Customs and Border Patrol agents taking more than 130 people into custody.
I'm just sharing my opinion as a teacher in the Charlotte area.
Does to students.
My homeroom class typically has 16 students in it. We had 4.
District-wide, there are 145,030 students.
I mean, hold on a second. So only a fourth of the class showed up. So 3/4 of your class either are kids who are illegal or their family is illegal in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's 75 freaking percent. That's unreal, right? That's ridiculous.
It's enrolled in Charlotte Mecklenburg schools. On Monday, 30,399 were absent. 28,136 unexcused. While CMS doesn't break down the numbers by ethnic origin, Gillespie, a multilingual teacher, did.
Children of parents from Angola, from Vietnam, but the students whose parents come from Latin American countries were the students we were missing. So that was kind of the line, even among the ML students, is that we were missing Hispanic students.
Davis says,
yeah, I wonder why that could be. It's a big mystery, is it not, guys? Yeah. It's okay.
News of the operation reached his students well before they entered the classroom on Monday. He says those who have come back are still scared, and he's unsure if or when the other students will return.
Scared of what? Scared of what? Do you remember what the Democrats told us in 2024? When you would see polls, for instance, saying in, Michigan or Pennsylvania or North Carolina, in their insane willing ignorance, you remember this argument? They said, why would a non-border state care about immigration or the border? It doesn't affect them. And we were trying to explain to the Biden supporters back then. No, actually it does, because your administration keeps flying the illegals and moving them to these places. And now here we are, by the way, where, see what we're talking about, right? In the swing states, North Carolina, who do they vote for in the election? Was that a competitive swing state? Was it considered a battleground state? Let me remember. Yes, it was. Maybe because people could clearly tell that the illegal migration issue actually was having a heavy impact on where they were living. Okay? And again, this idea that it's only the border states and the super deep blue sanctuary states that are affected by illegal immigration, not true. That's a stereotype from like 50 years ago. Let's live with the reality now. Where actually, if you're in either a red state or a purple state, you're more likely, as of late, under the last 4 years, to have received a bunch more illegals than even the blue states. Because very interestingly, the last administration, their movement basically asked all the people who don't support them to deal with their problems. Really wonder why that could be.
They should be able to come there and get their education. They should be able to come there and spend time with their friends, socialize. They should feel secure.
Gillespie says these days were not in his lesson plan, but it's a...
Well, if they're illegal, they shouldn't even be in the country, okay? And if they're anchor babies, that just shouldn't have been allowed to happen to begin with. I don't know what to tell you, buddy.
lesson everyone should learn.
ICE is never going to come to the school. Border Patrol is not going to come to the school. And I think what was chilling about yesterday is that it was demonstrated that they don't have to come to the school to affect the school. They don't have to step foot on the property to impact students.
In East Charlotte, Will Lewis, Queen City News.
So what you're saying is that the left-wing fearmongers, because that is true, right? We've never seen Border Patrol or ICE do a raid inside of a middle school or something like that. But you see that all the time, like fake left-wing Facebook posts. Oh, ICE is raiding the school. They're coming for you. So literally, again, that's an admission that you guys are just fear-mongering. And then there's probably like Latino students who are actually legal citizens, but they're told, right? Trump is deporting anyone who's Latino, so they're not going to show up. So literally, like you're the one who scared them, okay? And I want you to think, too, about the wider implications of that. Because one point we've been repeatedly trying to make on this channel is that you could basically tie any major issue America has, especially when it comes to something that needs funding, like schools, like welfare programs, like the national debt, etc. All of it can be directly traced back to the migration issue, right? Because think about the common conversations we have about American education. Oh, the quality is going downhill. And then the liberals say it's because the students don't have enough resources. We're not spending enough. We need to hire more teachers. The classroom sizes are too big, etc. And then they respond by saying, this is why we need to raise taxes. It's like, no, you don't need to raise taxes. The problem actually is, like, sincerely, 15% of the entire district, the majority of some schools, that the resources that should belong to American children and should be dedicated to them are literally being stolen from you by the migration crisis and by illegal aliens. And after all, as we've been trying to establish, you talk about the fact that most migrants are tax negatives on American society and not tax positives. Let me ask you the question. Do you think when, for instance, it comes to public schools, the families of those children are paying enough into the system to make it worth it? Or do you think they're sucking out of the system and therefore as the education system kind of goes downhill, we don't have enough money, it's overstretched, too crowded, etc. Yeah, they're draining resources out of the system, not adding into it, right? They're net negatives, not net positives. So something so important, of course, to understand. And this is why I find all liberal arguments about any kind of public funding thing, education, welfare, whatever it is. If you are not for stopping migration and curbing it and re-migrating people who are illegally or shouldn't be in this country to begin with, okay, then I'm not here to entertain your argument about raising taxes or giving more funding to so-and-so because the funding's not even going to Americans. So just keep that in mind, please. But let's move on. So that's what you're seeing in the school district. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as we're seeing the shocking ratios at which the number of ICE arrests in North Carolina are revealing so many with violent criminal records, again, the pro-crime policies of Charlotte are utterly insane. And the same goes for Sanctuary City, right? Take a listen here as so many North Carolina Democrats who are opposing these ICE raids have suddenly gone silent when asked about the vast criminal records, according to Fox News. So, several North Carolina Democrats who criticized or opposed federal immigration authorities in Charlotte were largely silent when asked about the dozens of criminals who were arrested during the operation. Yeah, what are they doing in Charlotte? I know I keep repeating myself, but just remember that, right? U.S. Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino returned to familiar soil and was seen on the ground in Charlotte after weeks in Chicago. By Monday, the Department of Homeland Security recorded 130 arrests of illegal aliens, including at least 44 with criminal records ranging from aggravated assault to known gang activity in its latest worst of the worst cachet. Right? So that's about like 4 over 12. So approximately 1 in 3 illegal aliens they found actually had like severe criminal records or criminal histories. And I bring that up because so often the Democrats say, oh, you claim you're going after the worst of the worst, but the majority of them don't have criminal records. It's like, yeah, if you're an illegal who's found, you are subject to deportation. But actually, if you're like throwing at a dartboard, you know, and one of the 3 illegal aliens there actually seriously has a criminal record, that actually shows that they're being pretty accurate, right? It actually does prove, because after all, right, think about the number of illegals who haven't committed a crime besides just illegally being in the United States versus the number of those with a criminal record. Either one of 2 things are true. Either ICE is actually doing a good job of prioritizing the worst of the worst, hence why that ratio is so high, right? Because 1 in 3 is pretty high. Or perhaps this narrative about how illegal aliens actually commit less crime at a lower rate than American citizens, maybe that's not true. Actually, if you're rounding up illegals and 1 in 3 has a criminal record, then maybe that says a lot about actually what we're bringing into this country and why perhaps Trump is right when he said that they emptied their prisons, sent their violent gang members, etc., etc. Just saying, right? Compare that, by the way, to the massive crime that Charlotte, a city not as commonly associated with it, is now known for in recent months. Yeah, actually makes perfect sense. Anyways, one of the more pointed reactions to the raids came from North Carolina State Rep Aisha Dew, who said on Friday that we do not need to have Border Patrol here. Oh, really? Well, you don't need them here. Yeah. Only 20% of your entire school district, 15 to 20%, are not showing up to school because there's that many illegals. On the first day, they find at least 40 people with criminal histories who are illegal that the city has just released back out onto the streets. We saw Arena's Arutsko, which might not be an immigration story, but it is indeed a crime story. It shows how unseriously you take crime in general. But that especially also does include illegal alien crime. It goes without saying those people should be deported if they're committing crimes in this country. So clearly, no, you do need Border Patrol there, actually, as a matter of fact, okay? And the success rate of this operation is completely proving, right, how much you actually need Border Patrol. As I've already said, I'm not sure what border we're patrolling here, Dew said at a press conference, while adding that surrounding states, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Virginia, don't pose any threats to the Old North state. So that's the exact argument I was trying to bring up that Democrats think they're so smart for saying. It's not a border state, so it doesn't have illegal aliens. Yeah, you understand we have something called roads, or airplanes more commonly actually under Biden. Yeah, you understand that illegals actually are being sent to a lot of non-border states? Yeah. You know, okay, what border you're patrolling here? Okay, all right. Then how is it that 15% of your school district isn't showing up? I thought you don't have illegals. You're not a border state. Huh? Yeah, I have the IQ of a rock. Such a stupid argument. She goes on here to say, though, right? And I quote, Charlotte is a safe city. Our crime rates had gone down since the previous year. This is just something out of the playbook, she said. Oh, it's a safe city. Hold on, let me pull it up for us, all right? Safe city, guys. Nothing to see here. Crime is down. Don't you know? I mean, who's not who's not is feeling safe in this situation? Oh, really? Safe city, you say? Yeah. We totally believe that. But anyways, this Democrat, as you could expect, did not respond to a request for comment after the worst of the worst list came out. Yeah, go figure. This one pledged to stand up to the intimidation of her district's immigrant community, saying, oh, wait, immigrant community? I thought that's not a border state. What are you talking about? How are there immigrants in a non-border state, Democrats? Huh? So you have one Democrat saying, we don't have illegals. We're not a border state. Another Democrat saying, I must protect my immigrant community in my district. Yeah, okay. So then, this person went on, Charlotte's immigrant community is a proud part of the Queen City. Wait, how do they exist? They're not a border state. And I will not stand by to watch my constituents be intimidated or harassed, she added. Your constituents, you mean the illegal aliens? Yeah, that tracks. You're a typical Democrat. So it goes on and on, but essentially, to make a very long story short, not a single Democrat cares to comment on the very high hit success ratio of arresting actual violent criminal illegal aliens in the process of this. Charlotte Mayor Vi Lyles, the very person who you may remember, covered up the murder of Irina Zarutska. Okay, she would not release that video to the public. Eventually, it got out, and then you found out that she totally misrepresented what happened. She said that the Carlos Brown Jr. was just having a mental health episode, and we have to be empathetic towards mental health. And then you see the video, and it's like, are you serious? You released the statement defending the criminal, not the victim? Anyways, writing in a joint statement with these other guys here that they hope not to see the same public violence as Los Angeles and elsewhere. The expected DHS operations are causing unnecessary fear and uncertainty in our community. Yeah. You guys really you want to avoid unnecessary fear and uncertainty in the community, right, guys? Diversity makes us stronger. Oh, really does it? And with that belief, we are unwavering in our commitment to a safe and welcoming community where everyone can grow and thrive. Yeah, it doesn't seem very safe and welcoming. But anyways, guys, there you essentially have it. We'll keep you posted on this wider situation, but it certainly appears that the Democrats are not all that happy once we uncovered or started to realize, hey, wait a minute. You're exporting your liberalism everywhere and causing a bunch of problems everywhere, aren't you? So that said, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.